If you've ever wondered how your past job experience can help you in the future, or if you're doing something that's building a skill for your next opportunity, pay attention to what Brandon says in this upcoming podcast, talking to co-founder of Hermetic AI about past experience helping future experience come to light. I'm Julia Davis, a film major who stumbled into the business world with no experience in 2006. I was able to fail enough to learn how to run a 7-figure business and have provided consulting services to over 200 individually owned companies. Through this podcast, I hope to provide some perspective on the growth and grit it takes to accomplish big goals and share some hard lessons I've had to learn along the way. Today on Growth and Grit, we're going to be talking to Brandon Dennis, who is a co-owner of an AI company called Hermetic AI. Brandon and I worked together for a very long time, over 10 years, and after COVID transitioned into running an AI business through some different stops along the way. So thanks so much for joining us, Brandon. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, we basically just help increase conversion. So when a lead comes in to through a website form or something like that, our AI engages with the lead, schedules the appointment or demo, whatever the next step in the sales process is, and then pushes the lead through the funnel. So depending on what their current process is, we're able to help convert anywhere from 50% to 100% more leads, basically. We can double their conversion. When I say convert, their sales, basically.
Yeah. And how did you find that this was a need?
Yeah, really good question. So prior to Hermetic, I was VP of sales at another software company. And part of my role there was to increase our conversion. We drove over a 2-year time frame, we drove right around 40,000 leads in through Meta ads. So they would come to our website, fill out a lead form, and then our sales team or SDRs would reach out to them, qualify them, and schedule an appointment. While looking at our funnel, we had about a 30% conversion rate. So out of those 40,000 leads, we were only scheduling meetings with about 30% of them. So we started looking at, different solutions that could help with that. And we were really buttoned up too. We had a ton of automations in place. They'd submit the form and our CRM would catch it. We'd send them emails and, reminders, all sorts of stuff. But that's just the nature of it. If you aren't reaching out to them immediately, when they're hot, when they're raising their hand, saying I'm interested, time goes by, the opportunity or the percentage chance of them turning into an opportunity drops. So we started looking for other solutions that could, engage with them right away, and just nothing really existed. So we started building Hermetic for our use case at my previous company. And through talking with other people in the industry, we realized it was a problem across the board. Everybody was dealing with it, and it just sort of became accepted. Like that was the normal conversion rate for, inbound leads. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, you think it's the norm. So because of that, it's status quo. It's totally okay. Like we're doing the same as everybody else.
Right.
And so we just realized there's a much bigger problem than what we were dealing with. And as people were hearing about Hermetic, well, at the time it didn't have a name. It was just something, AI tool that we had built internally. We had a lot of interest from people, and it started growing legs of its own. So we sold our last company in November of last year, 2023, and started running with Hermetic full time.
That's awesome. And I know you and I worked together in direct sales for a long time. I think it was over 10 years we worked together. And then during COVID, you moved into a different direction doing this, VP position with this other company and kind of moved your way up. What was something that surprised you the most about moving from the direct sales industry that you and I were in to working in a new industry that didn't have like the same type of sales network?
Oh, yeah, a lot. There were a lot of surprises for sure. So, and I don't know if this is true for everything, but just breaking into tech sales was really hard. It's called SaaS, software as a service, was really hard without any type of prior experience in it, even with my background. And I'm not, you know, thinking I'm better than other people, but I had a really good background, a really good resume, a lot of good recommendations. So it was more challenging than I expected. And so I took a job as an account executive, so individual contributor or sales rep. Um, so surprising how hard it was to find a role in tech sales or SaaS sales. Um, but once I did, like everything, and I'm not just saying this, but everything that I learned as an owner or in direct sales, there was a role for it in software sales. The conversion stuff that I'm talking about right now or earlier a lot of it came from our funnels that we built with recruiting or even the TTC chart, basically. So because of that, I grew very quickly. So I think after 6 months, I moved from account executive to director of sales. And after another year, I was VP of sales. And it's just because the work ethic, the attitude, and, the experience that I had with direct sales, it translated really well. Where other people, it's a remote job. They're counting on people to, show up on time and do what they're told without a lot of oversight. But I guess some people take advantage of that. And because of where I came from, that wasn't something that I planned on doing. So because of that, I was able to grow really quickly.
And what about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It was surprising to see. I don't want to say how easy it was, but sort of
Based on the experience that you had, and you felt like you had an advantage for sure.
100%. Like everybody was just like, even the top people at my company, when I was in training, I would get on calls with them and shadow them. And I would always think like, man, I'm going to crush this person. And I just need the chance to start pitching or to, start talking to people. And that was true across the board for, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but even leadership, I had the same feelings about.
And do you feel like you probably worked for now you're independent and you have a business partner and you've kind of created your own business again for yourself, which I think is typical, right? After you've run a business once, you're kind of like you have an itch to do it again, I think at some point. What was the thing that surprised you the most about leadership in other companies that maybe didn't have the same kind of training?
Yeah. I can only speak from my experience. So I don't know if it's fair to do a generalization of it, but also talking with other people, maybe it is. A lot of times they're out to protect themselves. When you move up into a role such as director or VP of sales, something like that, it's from my experience prior to getting into software sales, the leadership that I was around always was looking to lift other people up. That's how they, grew themselves, right? Is by helping other people succeed. Where once getting into software sales and experience different leadership, it was more about protecting their job because of, maybe how cushy it got or how easy it was for them. And so when there were challenges or issues or people missed their quotas, there was never accountability from leadership on that. It was always, somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
So surprising is a, different experience for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how hard has it been to scale a business from scratch? Like when it comes to like building out a product that there's a need for, but you have to scale it yourself and build it yourself. and it's just you and your partner trying to do this, what's been, like, the biggest challenge for you to be able to scale this?
Nothing happens fast. That's like, you know, every projection we've had in terms of timeline, we've been behind. And that's pouring tons of money into making it faster. Nothing happens fast. Everything takes longer, from development to, you know, marketing, go to market, all that kind of stuff. It's always delayed. You know, it's funny because everything, all these features that we developed along the way, and we're still in development. We add new features every single week. But when they roll out, uh, you know, we talk to our team, and the projection is 2 weeks from now, and then 2 months from now, it's still 2 weeks from now for the same thing. So it's everything just takes so much longer than you plan for. When we started this, again, we sold the last company in November and really got into this full time December, and I guess if I'm being fair, really January 1st, like full time, nothing else on our plate. Our initial projection was February launch, and now we're in October, and we just launched MVP, which is a minimum viable product, last month.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of an unrealistic expectation as it's good to have that optimism, but sometimes you gotta realize, like, it's gonna take a little bit longer than we thought, and it's just you gotta be able to how do you keep your motivation when you see the deadlines just keep passing and I'm sure it's expensive, right? Because you have to keep paying employees, you have to keep paying for products, so what was the type of investment that you had to make in the last 8 months to just get it to market?
Yeah. So we're probably a little over $300,000 in, um, as of right now. And the time, as far as motivation, like there's always, uh, uh, we always broke it down into mini goals, basically. So when a new feature would roll out, that's like a checkpoint or a thing to celebrate, even though it wasn't a full product yet. And when I talk about MVP, it's still not where we want it to be, right? It's not what we envisioned when we started development on it. So that's how we would keep motivation, is just focusing on that next checkpoint or that next feature, or whatever it is that we're working on. During that time, it's important that, we use that time to figure out, the plan for go to market, the plan for customer acquisition, the plan for, how we're going to scale our team, and creating that kind of stuff. That way it's ready for when, we are ready to do those things. So that's how we kept motivation. And plus it's your own, you own your own company, and it's your own thing. So it's hard not to be motivated to push it forward and see it through to the finish line. But definitely, there's times along the way where it gets challenging when you hear, hey, it's not going to be February anymore. It's going to be March. And then March turns to April and May, June, July. Now we're in October,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, it's just focusing on the little wins, I guess, along the way, and not keeping the big picture in mind, but focusing on the little wins along the way.
So now you've done a lot of different business, right? You've done business ownership as ICD. You've done that was direct sales. You've been the VP of sales in a company, and now you're the co-founder for an AI company. If you could go back in time and give, 21-year-old Brandon some advice, or people watching this maybe that are new in their career and trying to figure it out, or maybe lack a little bit of appreciation or gratitude towards the situation that they're in. The business that I'm in and the business that we've developed over the years. And something that I see is sometimes a lack of understanding and appreciation. Like, what advice would you have for those people going through all these different cycles of development?
Yeah. Hey, there's always, so no matter what it is you do, there's always a learning curve. And I think I know I've made this mistake before where I've looked at other people that I'd model after or I'd want to be like and say, man, their life must be good. Look at what all they've accomplished. But they didn't accomplish that overnight, you know? And I think it's easy to look at the other side of the fence and say the grass is greener, but you don't think about all the work you have to do to make the grass greener, to get it to that point. So, there's no such thing as like instant gratification, no matter what it is you do. Like I talked about my experience in my previous company, and I was able to grow quickly, but it still took, 8 months, 10 months to land the position, and then another 6 to 8 months to start growing in that role. So yeah, it does. Nothing happens overnight. Everything takes time. And the more time you put into something, the better you get at it. I mean, I think that's sort of obvious. But just keeping that in mind along the way, like just because you suck right now doesn't mean you're going to suck tomorrow or the next week, as long as you continue to put time into learning and improving at it. If you're accountable to it, and that's what we put a lot of focus on with Hermetic, is just being accountable to the mistakes along the way. That way we can learn from them. There's so many fingers that, we can point at our development team or whoever, but at the end of the day, we're the ones who brought them on board. We're the ones who made that decision to hire those people. So yeah, I think just knowing that everything takes time, and being accountable to the mistakes or the lessons along the way will help shorten the amount of time it would take to be good.
Yeah.
And just keep that in mind when you look at other people or situations that you think are more successful or doing better than yourself. They weren't always like that. They didn't start that way.
Right. And going back to the hiring thing, I know that when you're trying to bring people on board, talent acquisition is probably one of the biggest assets to a company, hiring the right people and bringing the right people on board. And you and I were chatting the other week about the recruiting process that you put up to hire someone. Can you go through that just a tiny bit?
Sure. So yeah, we hired our first SDR on a contract basis 2-3 weeks ago.
What is that? What's SDR?
Sales development representative. So
Okay.
they do uh, basically cold calling all day. So they're doing prospecting and generating leads for us. We hired our first SDR a few weeks ago. This was the first time I've posted an ad sort of by myself. So the first step, I guess, is I reached out to my network to see if, there was anybody that I had mutual connections with that would be a good fit. That didn't check out. So I posted an ad on Indeed. And within 4 days, we had over 500 applications. And it was all over the place, in terms of fit. I guess we eventually, it probably took a month before we pulled the trigger on hiring somebody. We move a lot quicker than most companies do with it, just because, from my background, I have, some experience with that. But yeah, 500 applications. I think we had, there was a step in the application process that I tried to use to whittle it down some. So ask them to, follow the company or do something in addition to submitting the application. And out of 500 applications, I think we had like 6 people that actually took that step. So that helped with the process a little bit because I didn't have to go through 500 resumes, I guess. But yeah, it's a ton of resumes, a ton of people that submitted, and a ton of time that it took to find somebody. And it's still early, we'll find out where that goes. And we're still learning in terms of training and how to ramp people up quickly. So yeah, I would say on average, it takes, on the short end, 1 month. But probably most companies around 4 months for that process.
Just to
Uh,
hire just yeah, the hiring process, I was reading something about the hiring process average time, and it said, like, 28 days was the
mm,
average time from application to making a decision, but then the orientation might be 2 months later or,
right.
whatever, but I thought that was crazy because in the industry that I've been in, it's, like, very fast. So,
Mhm.
the fact that most companies take 28 plus days to hire was, like, a real wake-up call,
Yeah.
you know?
It, a little background. So again, I think we moved very quickly because of my experience in direct sales and the hiring process there. I'm able to sort of duplicate that here. But it was about a month for this hire. In the past, in my previous company, we hired somebody who was sort of like a fractional CFO, is the best way to put it, a contract employee off of Upwork or Fiverr, and they stole over a 2 year time frame over $200,000 from us. So we're the vetting process is very important
My
um,
god.
when you go through those type of experiences, and even to this day, you know once somebody's hired, to your point, like that vetting process isn't necessarily over yet. There's still some tests and stuff that we got to check the boxes on. We do have a very similar process. I like the situational interviews where we put them in a situation similar to a day of O,
Mhm.
um, where we see how they respond in certain situations. So we have a similar process, but just in terms of vetting, it takes a little bit longer.
What do you think is, the biggest advantage that you brought in from your past career? Like, what do you think was like the I mean, you've talked about it a little bit with understanding the recruiting funnel and understanding, the work ethic and how to stay positive, but what do you think is like the missing piece from most employees of businesses or owners of businesses that you had as an advantage from doing direct sales?
Yeah, good question. I think there's a lot of them. Um, I you know I this is going to sound cliche, but I think it's attitude. Um, I remember when I started my last position, yeah, I thought that to myself when I would get on calls with uh, leadership, and they were being negative publicly. I remember thinking like, man, how's this team gonna, survive with leadership that's talking this way? So I think the big thing was attitude, like not necessarily being optimistic. Like I think I'm an optimistic person, but um, you know, understanding that the challenge that we're facing today is not necessarily going to be a challenge tomorrow. And it's a pain in the butt right now that we have to deal with, but it's not going to last, more than a day or a week. Once we figure it out, we'll figure it out. Where I think a lot of times the people I've worked with and I've met along the way don't necessarily look at challenges that way, where it becomes sort of, a mountain out of a molehill, or it's the end of the world type of thing. And they let that affect uh, their work ethic, all the stuff that they're doing. And then all of a sudden they look back a month later when the challenge is, gone, and they wish they wouldn't have done what they did over the past month. They made it worse for themselves. So I see that happen a lot. Uh, they let their attitude affect, you know, them doing the right thing. Um, and so I would say that's probably a big one. Um, Also trusting in like the numbers game. That's been a big thing. Just as VP of sales, I built our SDR team at our last company, and obviously we're doing that now. And so everything it becomes a numbers game for me, where, I look at things and I'm able to tell, okay, if we do this many calls, or if we, spend this amount on ads, this is what it backs out to. This is what we can expect for sales. And so once we know those numbers, um, just trusting in that, and never have they failed. When I was in sales, when I was an individual contributor, every month I doubled our quota. Um, because I just played the numbers game. I took every demo, I took every call that I could, and I didn't have a better skill at the time. I just started. But yeah, I took way more calls than other people. And so I doubled our quota. I doubled what every other rep was doing. Every other rep would hit what the quota was, to a T. Like they'd make it by $1,000, and I would literally I doubled the quota every month when I was in sales.
Just because you just called more people or answered more phone calls. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes total
100%.
sense.
Again, sort of no brainer stuff.
Right.
Like coming from, direct sales and the training there. But that's like in the real world, people, don't necessarily practice it. And so it's sort of odd, but something I can use to my advantage for sure.
That's awesome. And so what would be like your ideal client, like for Hermetic now? Like what type of client are you looking for? Like what would be, just in case someone's watching this and is like in need of your product, I want you to have an opportunity to sell it. So what company, what type of business is the ideal client for you?
Yeah. So we have sort of two sales arms. We have a sales arm that targets B2B companies. So they sell to other businesses. And we have that pretty locked down. So we work with some influencers, and have a heavy presence on LinkedIn, which is a big B2B platform. So we have that locked down. We are looking to build out our B2C sales arm. That's why we brought on, ramping up our SDR team. And so when I say that, it's companies that are targeting the end consumer. So that would be like a home service type of company, like pest control, roofers, solar, like those type of people, contractors, kitchen remodelers, where they have, they either are solopreneurs or they have a sales team, and they need help converting their inbound leads. I'm trying to think of an example, like the guy who's up on the roof hammering shingles himself and can't answer the call. When a lead comes in, that we would be able to help them a lot. Also, a lot of times companies, when they get bigger, they get bulky and slow, and they lose the hunger to chase a lead. So that's one thing that we've seen is, some of these companies that have expanded and opened up multiple locations, and they're doing really good, don't get me wrong, but they aren't as hungry as the small guy. Because of that, they lose a lot of business to the small guy. So we're able to help them a lot as well. So it's companies like that where speed of lead is important. There's a lot of competition. So the roofing company, the person who submits a form on their ad or their website, that same lead is going to the next ad on Google or Facebook or whatever it is and submitting a form for the other roofing company, and so on and so forth. So places like that where there's a lot of competition, where speed to lead is important. 80% of customers do business with the company that responds first. So it gives them a massive leg up. What we found is the average response time for most companies, companies like I'm speaking of, average response time is 2 days. The amount that happens in 2 days with a lead, not only finding other people, but sometimes you just forget you had the problem that you reached out for in the first place. So we're able to help a lot of those companies. Again, on average, we can double their conversion, their inbound conversion. So double the amount of people they actually do sales meetings with without them invest more in marketing. But there's a lot of other stuff too. We automate a lot of the process, like collecting company reviews, feedback on their reps, those type of things. So.
And if they want to find you, they can find you on LinkedIn?
Yep, LinkedIn or www.hermetic.ai.
Okay, awesome. So if they're watching and they say, oh my gosh, this is something that I need, they can just go to the website and there's a button or something on there where they can contact you guys.
Yeah, they can book a demo, they can see our AI in action, or they can reach out to me directly. I'm, obviously involved. So yeah, my email is Brandon@hermetic.ai. So BRANDON at Hermetic, HERMETIC.ai.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Brandon. I really appreciate you taking the time today to do this podcast with me. It was very, very insightful and helpful, and I always like talking to you. So thanks for being on here with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, keep me posted. Let me know how I can help.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.